year, retail chain Penney began making several changes to its overall business strategy. Although the store was once very popular, it has struggled in recent years. So in an effort to turn the company around, Penney began making several changes, including modifying its logo, creating a simpler approach to pricing, and also developing a new promotional strategy. But unfortunately for the retail chain, the results have not been promising at this point. In fact, it has actually seen a drop in sales instead of an increase. So what has gone so wrong, and is it possible for the company to save its new plan? Well, to find out these answers, we're going to bring in Martha Guidry, a principal partner of The Right Concept and also the author of new book Marketing Concepts That Win. It's great to have you today, Martha.
Thanks so much. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Well, you have been in the marketing business for a very long time, and you're known as the concept queen, and you've worked with companies such as Procter & Gamble. So what has happened with JCPenney's new strategy? Was it a bad one, first of all?
Actually, I don't think the strategy was bad per se. I think it's been the execution of that strategy that has really gone afoul for them.
Do you blame the company's new CEO, Ron Johnson, the former head of the retail at Apple at all?
You know, I don't really think it's his fault per se. I think they came up with a great idea. They really hit a sweet spot with consumers, which was this whole idea of having no couponing and no promotions and all that kind of stuff. So I think that was a really smart idea. I think when they rolled out that strategy, and I think they called it fair and square pricing, the consumer didn't understand, and it wasn't well communicated in their different media venues that they chose. And that's where the complication came from.
Right. Well, in your book, you talk about a positioning concept. So what does this do, and how would this have helped Penney's?
I think they had the threads of a great concept. The challenge has been, really, there's three primary elements that you want to make sure that you get right. First, it's the content. Do you have the right idea? And I think they had the right idea, getting rid of the promotions. I think where they kind of messed up is they didn't make it relevant to the consumer, and they didn't use language that made sense for that consumer. For example, JCPenney has really been all about sales. And even though that was the idea, get rid of the sales, a sales price every day, they never used that word. It would be really easy for them to have said fair and square pricing is a sale price every day. And I think people would have gotten it. They didn't communicate it in that way.
Well, I understand that you actually have a step-by-step process for this concept development approach that you have. So can you share some of these steps with us?
Well, really, it's all about understanding your target consumer and identifying a need that needs to be fulfilled. And that's what positioning is all about, finding what I call white space in the market. And clearly, there's a lot of retail competition, and JCPenney was trying to carve out a niche, much like they did successfully with Target by making it kind of chic and low price. They did actually go through and find a positioning. A lot can go wrong from the time that you have a concept written and you actually bring it into market.
Right.
And I think they had the right ideas, but then they brought it to life in a non-relevant way. And the consumer was very confused. And so I would have actually spent more time probably testing the idea with consumers. They have, 1,100 stores? Perhaps a test market with 100 stores would have allowed them to fine-tune the language, get it right before they launched the whole chain.
Right. You also talk about this clear thinking in your book and how it really helps companies get it right the first time. So can you get into this a little bit further? And is that what you're saying, that JCPenney wasn't thinking in this clear way initially?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the CLEAR stands for what C is content, L is language, and R is relevance.
Gotcha.
They had the content. They found an emotional hotspot for the consumer, and that's exactly what you want to do. Then in terms of making it relevant, they had to think about their consumer in terms of what are they thinking about, how do they feel, what's going on in the marketplace. And clearly, in a down economy, they should have been thinking about, well, what's relevant to my consumer? And that's where the fair and square pricing, the advertising that they manifested from this strategy was all about the negatives, the promotions, the sales, all the things that people didn't want. They didn't communicate in a relevant way, in a consumer-friendly way, the language that the consumer needed to hear in order to understand that strategy. And that's where they kind of missed the relevance and the language.
Right. Well, JCPenney, they really did have a huge challenge on their hands since it was essentially revamping a concept that had been around for a very long time. But are you saying that if they had applied these principles that you suggest, that this situation could have turned out differently?
I do think it could have. I do think. I mean, there's a way to communicate everything in a way that the consumer likes. And part of what we do when we work through concept development is we do a lot of stuff iteratively, which means repetitively with consumers, and we continually tweak the language until we find the language that really resonates with them. I think JCPenney probably took a leap of faith or maybe a leapfrog step. They went from having this idea to jumping into very advertising language that really didn't resonate. So I think they skipped a step, and it's done them a huge disservice.
What about other companies that have been in this situation? Can you share any examples with us that companies are basically that have revamped and done it right?
Well, Target, the CEO's former employer, they did a beautiful job. They identified an opportunity, which was people had shopped at discount department stores. It wasn't a very pleasing environment. They weren't expecting all the best brands. Target was very successful in showing great brands, a wonderful shopping experience, and making it kind of hip and cool with their advertising. So all the elements of the marketing mix came together. JCPenney, the elements of the marketing mix did not come together, and it ended up with a confused consumer and a lost consumer.
Right. Well, JCPenney has come out recently and said that it plans to adjust its marketing message somewhat, but doesn't plan on changing the strategy. Do you think that this is a good step in the right direction in turning this around?
Oh, absolutely. I think if they can find language that's more meaningful to the consumer, that it'll help a lot. I think their fundamental idea, fair and square pricing, is a great idea. I don't think it makes sense to the average American consumer, which is their target audience.
All right, well, time will tell what happens next. Thank you so much for talking with us, Martha. We really appreciate your insights.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. And the book is called Marketing Concepts That Win and is available at all major bookstores and online. I'm Abby Johnson with this report.